So I know we're not going to be able to talk a lot probably about Peak 6 due to NDAs. But what was the attraction of this org, and what can you say about the vetting process? Because they were, and what are they? So first off, yeah, let's start with what are they, so people know because they are the current owners of EG. And what were your conversations like with them? And they are in fact a family office. So
Yes, though it's a curious situation where they are both a family office and also don't like to identify as a family office. They, it is Matt Holsizer and Jenny Just who are the family of the family office. They're the couple who are the chief owners of this thing. But Peak 6 is the name of their family office, so to say. But they own several very successful businesses with very high EBITDA, so they create a ton of profit every year. And they need, it's like other really rich people. They make a lot of money and they need to figure out how to reinvest it. Family office is usually a way to like reinvest huge sums of money into businesses instead of just buying stocks. You're like buying whole companies sometimes. And their kind of MO is that they, each of them has their passions and they sort of get into businesses a lot of times based on their passions. And so, family office was a profile we liked a great deal. And for me in particular, Matt Holsizer was very passionate about sports. He's a big hockey guy, really wanted to own a hockey team, owned various European football clubs and some other things. And so he and I really like hit it off well, I think was an important piece of that like early relationship building. They were very invested in my idea of what I wanted EG to be and what I felt like EG should be, which was EG should be the brand. Like we should go into spaces where EG can be the name, where we can like regrow EG and really like be another, put it back on the same level as C9, as TL, as these, as TSMs, as these groups that are kind of omnipresent and powerful everywhere they play. So he was very bought into that. He liked that idea. He was aggressive, and they brought the idea of, again, from the family office, like you said exactly, which is that you don't have to go get around and do a fundraising round. If the family office sees something they believe in and you can sell them on it, they will go do it. And that is what that was my experience in my brief time there. Again, I can't speak to a lot, but you can see the public side. Like my pitch had been, I want to get us back in the LCS and back into Counter-Strike with top teams within 2 years. That was kind of like, we had a 2-year, like it's going to take that long. They acquired us in May, and we were back in both in 6 months. And that was opportunistic. You had Echo Fox fall apart. We didn't think any LCS team would be selling at that period of time. So like that was kind of a miracle situation. But they came in and they were like, fuck it, we're getting this shit. And we went balls to the walls, and they were really great about
and
that.
the alleged purchase price was 30 million for that slot.
Again,
it was what was reported on.
Yeah, things I cannot speak to, but like we worked very hard on that deal, and they were very committed to it, and they wanted it, and they believed in it. And again, this was still the period pre-COVID when LCS was still in a position of relative strength. And same thing with Counter-Strike. We got wind that I knew the Louvre agreement stuff was working because I have a relationship to Victor, like that was in process, and I knew it was the time to strike for Counter-Strike. And you had this
Victor is the co-CEO of Team Liquid, guys, and the original, and he is the one who does their Dota stuff. So you guys might know Steve. Steve is in America doing their League stuff. Victor is in the Netherlands, and he does their Dota and CS stuff, their Valve stuff.
Yep.
Just for context. And Victor was a key driver to the Louvre agreement, and was working very closely with ESL to kind of be the main, I would say, one of the main team owners in driving that agreement forward.
Absolutely. And so, I knew like that, we had this 2-year timeline, but it's like, okay, well, Echo Fox is falling apart. Let's make a play for that. And at the same time, I can go to the family office and say, hey, this top NA team, NRG, that like comes along once in a blue moon, these guys for some reason don't want to do this anymore. They want to sell this thing. Like we should jump on this because there's this chance to get at the ground floor of this agreement that's going to be like the closest thing to franchising you're ever going to see in a Valve space. Like you're going to have real asset value, which again, they still care about as a family office. They still want to build investment value in the money they put in. But they were like, that part of the relationship was exactly what I wanted for out of the gate, which was like they shared the vision and they have the nimbleness to move if and when you see opportunity ahead of a timeline, which we did there. We saw opportunity to be in those spaces much earlier than we'd been planning. So that was kind of the good part of the profile, and the part of the profile that played out well. Nicole, she didn't come out of nowhere. She was working for Peak6 at the time. She was the person vetting deals. She was vetting, us versus G2 versus other things that they were looking at. They were looking at esports in a few different teams. And we, and so I built a relationship to Nicole, and I think we had a really good rapport in kind of the deal flow process and the vetting process, and just worked well together during that period. So, again, we came to the point of doing the deal, knowing that we were probably not getting the best deal in the world. We were getting a fair deal, and we got good opportunity for some of our people to to be very successful out of it. And we gave we got ourselves, like, everybody got paid. We got back to solvency, and we got back in with owners who were willing to spend and wanted to grow. So that was kind of the
and I think crucially too, it's important to note here that you don't have to talk about this, Phil, but like part of your deferred salary is like the reason why you're working so hard and living off your fucking credit cards and deferring your salary is so that you can eventually get paid, right? And it's crucial to note that if you guys don't sell this team and you are running on fumes, that your entire life for the last few years is just pointless financially, right? And that's and also, Phil, it's also true that you had an obligation to your other co-owners who are in the same situation. So even if some people may have disagreed with the decision to sell, there is, an ethical obligation that you guys have to each other to not like collectively ruin your fucking lives, right? And so it may have been a hard call, and you may not have had the most suitors, but given the dire state of the company and the fact that, you have a duty both to yourself and others to like see yourself through this financially, like it can feel like you need to go through it. And indeed, there's a very strong argument to do what you did. So I just don't want people to like start jumping all over you because of what ends up happening. And you could not have known, most likely, I don't think it was reasonable to assume what ended up happening under Peak6 was like,
of course
what was going to happen.
Oh, that was an anomaly. Come on. And also, I'll actually even give him extra props for the thing when he was running up all the credit cards and having to pretend he was it. He wasn't just doing that, guys, because he wanted a job in esports and he thought, it'd be cool if he. Also, remember what he said earlier? He's having to convince players take less salary and take some equity. When that scenario, you can't then go, lol, there was no equity in the end. We never sold it. It's broke. Like you'd feel extra. It'd be more of a weight on your shoulders, I've no doubt. So at that point, you're trying to sort of prop up other people too.
Yeah. I can tell you clearly, everybody was ready to sell when the sale happened. We were at a point where, if the sale didn't happen, we were looking at dissolving at that point, or very, very nearly after. If it had fallen through, there was no timeline to get. We'd done a bridge round to like give us a little bit of finance before, so we'd taken a little bit of money from some people we were able to put together. But that was like $20,000-$30,000 or like $100,000 maybe total, just like a small sum to try and like.
And you also have an obligation to your investors in that bridge round not to immediately lose all their money.
Yeah, and they bridged us knowing that we had a deal that was in the works that just needed more time. So, and again, like there were yellow flags. We knew that there was some, that they could be aggressive. They could be aggressive as a group for good, and also sometimes potentially for putting you in more challenging positions in businesses they had run. And so but we had felt good about the people we worked with on the deal. I'd spoken directly to Matt and Jenny frequently. They were also really invested. Like we had regular meetings following, and it really went the way I had hoped it would go for a while. I eventually left to go work on other things, and things changed afterwards. I think by most people's perspective, but I don't know. It's heartbreaking to see what has happened to it. Feeling so good, there in a 10-day period, we got an LCS slot and we got the NRG CS team. I can't tell you how high of a high that was. Like talking to Alex and being like, "We fucking did it, man. We got this thing. Like somehow, some way, we got this like thing that was had daggers like at every angle, and we got it through, and we're fucking back, man. Like EG's back. Nobody even knew we were getting that CS team. We like came out of nowhere with it. We fucking win ESL New York. Like it was like the highest point of my whole life, that week. And it almost all makes it feel worth it. But also I saw what happened to Alex with Twitch and selling to a company and feeling like having your whole livelihood taken from you when like you're meant, like everything that you identify as yourself, you lose that when someone else owns the thing and they move away from what you want for it. And I made the decision when we sold that I wasn't going to let myself be put in that place where I know that I don't own this anymore. I can do everything I can within my powers, but it's not mine. And I have to accept that at some level there is an end to like where I can influence it. And I have to make my best mental health decision to not have what happened to Alex, where he ended up years on in legal battles and and dealing with that stuff. So
yeah, and Alex is in the same place that Hector's been in too, which is like watching the Optic brand be used and abused by other people, and like taking big issue with that as something he built. And I think also, you said at the start of this, you came from a fan perspective, and so there is from those of us who are on the outside who were watching EG, there is a glorified lionized version of evil geniuses in our mind. And I imagine for you it was probably something of a dream to be part of EG and to be given the keys to the kingdom. And so to help it survive and then go from fucking almost broke to $30 million LCS acquisition, as you say, in the kind of peak of LCS fervor, when the viewership was extremely good, everybody was very bullish. These slots were trading for a lot of money. Nobody wanted to give them up. The only reason Echo Fox had to give them up is because Riot forced them to, because of their like ownership racism scandal. And like the fact that one of the equity holders in the company like wouldn't divest, and so they forced the sale of the slot. And so you were a beneficiary of that, and also NRG, who when we talk about Counter-Strike, and Richard and Thorin can chime in here, at that point in time, NRG's team was a very like the North American team,
and it was yes.
Yeah, they were really good, and they were like the kings of NA. And like you said, Phil, you wanted this to be an NA brand primarily, and having a very good NA Counter-Strike team has been a relative rarity in the history of the game, compared to the European dominance of CS over the years. And NRG kind of suddenly decided that, well, it's not really worth it having this team, and you guys were just there to scoop it up, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, it was a great feeling, and yeah, it didn't last. And for the brand, of course, it hasn't lasted. But I feel I've made peace with the reality of where things have gone, and I hope that a better future exists for the brand somewhere, some way. But it's a lot of complicated feelings. But
the key question, like I've never understood, is why didn't they just make you the CEO and Nicole the COO instead of the other way around? And then I think if because okay, hey, we're buying an esports org, and this is the guy who has been instrumental in keeping the lights on all this time. Meanwhile, we have Ivy League educated, successful.
I mean, but she's like in her what, mid-20s at this point in time,
yeah,
right?
Why not say, okay, we're going to give her a C-suite role, but like she can't be the one calling the shots in totality because she doesn't know the space. Meanwhile, this guy has demonstrated he does, and has also been instrumental in getting this deal across the line. So he needs to have the veto on all the major decisions, surely. So that for me has always been the thing I've never understood, and I honestly believe, because Nicole, like I'll just say it, like Nicole is a really unlikable person, and everyone I've interviewed pretty much confirms this. I've heard so many stories, so many anecdotes that never made it into the public domain, and how like she demoralized the troops pretty much on day one. I just can't believe that if it had been the other way around and there was just somebody above her in the C-suite structure, I think evil geniuses would have been fine.
Yeah, I have some feelings about the what ifs of all of that. Nicole and I worked very well in for a long period of time, and we had some great successes in those early days and in getting the deal together. The reality was, again, I kind of framed the situation when we were selling, right? We had some limited leverage, number one, right? And I was aware of that at the outset, even before we approached Peak6 or this other group or anyone else. When Peter left, I had the opportunity to move from COO to CEO, and I actively chose to stay in the COO role because I put it on every one of our decks that we would work collaboratively with the group that we did the investment with to pick a CEO. Now, there was always in that conversation, there's always a possibility, well, I could step into that role. But also we know that especially for outside investor groups, they like to pick their person. It's a big selling point for them. And for some teams that come in with a young, hot esports CEO in that role, who's not willing to compromise, they're like, I'm the CEO. It's a turnoff. It's a detractor for some of these groups who want to.
Yeah, you also question loyalty to the new ownership potentially, or motives.
For sure. And that's played out in some cases, right? Where some of places where investor groups worked with an esports team and the CEO was an esports person, sometimes the esports person CEO endemic ended up going pretty rogue and being in list. It kind of cuts both ways. You can see where their trepidation is. I chose to keep the COO side and leave it as an open question and an open opportunity because I wanted to juice our pitch as best we can. And for Peak6, they really liked the idea of being able to fill that spot and wanted to put Nicole into that spot. And I've been working with her on the deal closely and felt like I could work with her. And so we talked about that all itself before close, of course, and had worked it out. But it was something I had gone in before even Peak6, ready to deal with the reality of that as a possibility and having to navigate that. So. But I do have a lot of mental what ifs because I don't disagree. If things have been flipped, maybe some things work out differently. Who knows? But it's hard to say. I was involved in a lot of leadership stuff, especially in that first year. So it's things change. But I felt pretty good about how things went while I was there, even though she was CEO and I was COO. I felt like at that time we were still on the same page.
The pre Jessica Hammond, basically, or would you disagree with that characterization?
Again, I would speak just to the broad generalities of some of these pre Peak6 experiences and generally the feeling good about especially the public successes we had in our first year working together. I have some limitations, so I'm trying not.
No. Listen,
go beyond.
We knew that coming in.
Is it the case? Look, I understand from some of these war stories, some of the horror stories, you've been through the ringer by being in this team. But I would say, actually, assuming this all checks out and someone went and they looked in the background and asked around and references and stuff, if anything, actually, this sounds like the best advert I've ever seen for someone to be CEO of an esports organization. You've essentially run it at a min-max, which almost every other org did not do when they thought they could turn on the money tap from the VC and buy as many teams as they could and overpay for players. Sounds like you actually did kind of walk the line very, very well. There's very few people like that in esports, I'd say.
I would not say I walked the line very well. And if you're calling me for a esports CEO job, I decline. I do not want to run a team ever again. It's not on my list. So this is not. This is not me.
Me too, buddy. Yeah. I don't the stress of that time period because I was running a team during that time period with no investment. Also, is fucking astronomical. So it's not fun.
Yeah, I was playing basketball the other day. I play a lot of basketball, and someone was like, "Phil, you're always just so calm out there." And I'm like, "It's because you don't know the things I have seen and the things I have been through. Everything else is just deadened to me after that experience." But I feel at peace with the time and feel good about some of the things. But I made a billion mistakes and there's still things that I feel deeply regrettable about because it wasn't clean. Everybody didn't get out clean. There are some dead bodies along the way, 100%. People who who didn't get the best deal or didn't get the best opportunity, and like it fucking sucks. I'm happy we got anybody out with anything, and that we gave the thing some life, and we gave ourselves a shot at doing some cool things after all of that. Like that stuff I'm really happy and proud about, and I'm just glad to be alive about the rest of it. So
see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.